Welcome this afternoon. I have titled this presentation Lessons and Landmarks, and it is not uploaded to the wiki site. When we get it a little bit more improved upon, we will make it available to more of you. This is the second edition. Some of you are at Ignite, and we will add a few parts, and there are a few things that we're going to skip over in our time. But what we're doing is the leadership of the Institute, has really been working on being able to articulate and crystallize some of how the mission that we are walking out today came into being. So I want to begin by sharing something that happened to me about 3 years ago that began to drive this concept that across the organization people need to know what we're doing and why we're doing it and what this vision is. Home for me. I was introduced to speak at another organization's national convention. It was an honor and I appreciated being there. And they had specifically selected somebody to introduce me, and she was so excited to introduce me, and she introduced me with a number of interesting data to her about me. And one of the things that she said about me is that I was a visionary. And my immediate response was that I was offended by the word. So this is right before I went on their convention platform, so you have to set that aside and talk. And I did, and I finished my responsibilities there and spoke with people, and on the way home, I began to question that response that I'd had, because I had never had it before, and I didn't know where it came from. And it actually took me a while. It took me a few weeks, and I prayed about it, I reflected in some journaling, and I came to the realization that I was offended by being introduced as a visionary because I had never worked with a visionary who had their feet on the ground. I had never worked alongside a visionary who I could follow into a vision. I couldn't grasp the vision enough to be able to follow it. And I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be a different kind of leader. And so that helped me to think about how important it is for us to crystallize what we're talking about. A couple of years ago, I attended a webinar on leadership. And the guest leader that was being interviewed at the webinar said this: leaders of organizations, when you are called into leadership, your mission will never change, your vision continues to grow forever. That completely resonated with me, and I got it. Because at that moment, I realized that we have been in the Institute about the same mission since the beginning. It hasn't been articulated the same way. We haven't known how to communicate it exactly the same way. We've refined and distilled that. We've crystallized how we carry it out, and we've done a whole lot better job over the years of empowering other people to execute it and walk it out together. And I pray that 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we will do a whole lot better job than we're doing today. But we have come a long way. And it's exciting to me to talk about that and share some of my journey and ICC's journey with you this afternoon. So we're going to embark on this journey of how it is that we talk about the mission and how our expanding vision has helped us better communicate the mission that we've been on since the beginning. And you're going to enjoy right now my learning how to use my Mac. So all of you Mac users who are better than me, good for you. But I am working up to it. And there are a few things that are a little bit different for me. And one is that this dropped in this way, all the pieces coming together. And those of you who know me know that they never quite happen fast enough, and that would be true of this slide. So you're going to have to hold on while we keep going.
Push the button again.
It's not going to go.
You will have to wait.
I have to wait on it. Thank you so much. See, I think this. Dude, can I just tell you, inside story, the Moon Boys for years thought that the great fun that they had because they were drugged from conference to conference all over the country, dragged, I guess would be the right word. They weren't drugged to go to conferences, they were dragged to conferences, but because they were dragged all over the they thought that it was really great fun to see how far off balance balance, they could throw Mom right before I went on a platform. And then the bigger the platform, the more fun it got. So this is like part of their God's refining me. Okay, I'm going to go way back for this, and we're going to see how fast we can make this go. Because a part of our mission is about equipping Christians, and God has been in the process of equipping me. And I know that many of you would say that, and we share that. And my equipping began in high school. My equipping began in high school, where I was involved in an innovative educational program in high school. It wasn't like traditional high schools. We made a new schedule every day. We went to our classes on our own schedule. It was very, very different. In high school, I tried the forensics team, and I bombed. As a matter of fact, I was so bad, I had a lot of other interests. I did a lot of other things, and I chose that after a semester on the debate team that I was going to go pursue other interests, and the debate coach did not try to invite me back. So they weren't interested in having me there at all. I added nothing to the team, and I'm pretty sure it was sort of a, she's gone. So and that was my sort of initiation to some of this world. In college, I got degrees in education and in communication. I can see now how God was equipping me for an organization that's built on educating communicators. Educating communicators who are leaders, because leadership and communication go together. And so, but in college, I was still so deathly afraid of the platform that even in my debate rounds, I had to leave on our prep time and get sick and come back. My partner loved this a lot, you have to know, because it was sort of like, are you going to be here or not? So, and sometimes I even missed part of my speaking time coming back. I got over that. My partner and I won a lot of awards, and I developed a really sarcastic tongue during some of those days, because silver-tongued debaters did well. And boy, did I learn how to debate well, because I was motivated by recognition and by awards. And so even though I was in a Christian school, cutting your opponent seemed to be valued. And you can see where the seeds were planted for later, when I came to the realization, that's not what we're trying to train in the next generation. We're not training leaders who will cut people down. We're training young people who will challenge ideas and respect people. And so but I learned that lesson because I failed my way into it. I love it that Dr. Oster talked about analyzing failure as a way to succeed really in leadership and to become authentic leaders. And I had some of those personal lessons myself on the way there. In 1992, I knew that I needed to pursue a master's in curriculum and instruction, and as soon as I had completed that, I founded Harvest Christian Academy, a private Christian school for homeschooling families, where I met Karen Miller in California. And that school actually still exists today. And at that time, I began to realize that some of all of this training, this equipping of me, was about my being called in the area of equipping Christians. And you recognize that is part of our mission statement now. God was planting those seeds years ago, and I want to emphasize some of this because I think that God is planting seeds in all of us, and He's preparing us, and He's cultivating that for whatever it is that He's calling us to do. And of course, this has been my own personal journey and part of the ICC story. Little did I know how I would use some of that. I began teaching public speaking classes for everyone in Harvest Christian Academy. And I began coaching and teaching speakers, and some of you will recognize the beginning public speaking curriculum had its roots here. Karen told us yesterday, and that is a true story. I began teaching some of those classes when Wendell and Devin were 5 and 8, and they were so cute then. So they were cute then. So, but I remember, parents, I remember that Devin, we had special rewards for Devin if he could sit through an entire beginning public speaking class without getting kicked out. And so he was I need positive words here, but he was, it wasn't good, okay? It wasn't a good scene. And we were learning how to make all of that work, and we were learning a bit about respect and about training respect, but I was also learning something that I could not have learned with the very tame children that God seems to give other people. And so one of the things that I would not have learned is the benefits of a very interactive, engaging kind of curriculum that has kids moving and talking as much as possible. I would have missed that if I didn't have kids that needed to be moving and talking. And so even there, there, God knew, and He's influenced so much of what we do through the Institute that way. One of the things that I recognized in those years is it is pointless to take young children and talk to them about how to be a better speaker. Can anybody in here amen that by now? It's absolutely pointless. They need to do it. They need to try it, and they need to realize the fun of actually telling the joke and having it be funny for the other person. So, and one of the things that I learned in the next few years is 11-year-old boys love to tell jokes. They are never funny. And so the best thing we've done for parents of those little boys is let them tell their jokes on other people, because then they can keep trying until they get it. But they aren't funny. But in these years, I knew that we are equipping Christians to communicate. I knew that much. I knew we were equipping them to communicate. In 1995, I began teaching a debate program. I knew I was equipping Christians to communicate, but I didn't know where that was going to go. And please follow the timeline here, because that was 1995, and HSLDA hadn't even launched a debate program for homeschool debaters yet. But I was convinced that that critical thinking had to be part of what informed the communication skills. I published Evaluating for Excellence in 1996. I knew the importance of communication. Those of you who have seen that resource, I was very targeted. My thinking had come from public school teaching and administration into private and Christian school, or private and homeschool teaching and administration. And I was committed to young people articulating what they're learning. So shortly after I had published that curriculum, I was invited to present some seminars on it to homeschool and private school conferences. And I remember one of the very first times a woman came to me. She had purchased the book, and she's flipping through the book, and she said, "Did you realize," she's asking the author now, right, if I know what's in my book. She said, "Did you realize that almost every single evaluation form, in fact, every evaluation form includes some form of oral evaluation?" And I remember just wanting to say, how did that get in there? That silver tongue thing that I had to get over. So anyway, but yes, I realized it, because that was always part of my educational philosophy, which is part of my communication education philosophy, which is part of what you're doing now when you use some of these training materials. One of the things we know is that we know it better if we can communicate it to somebody else. I recently came across a study in this. They were studying grammar school children in school settings, and what we've come to know is that comprehension increases more rapidly when a young person's ability to articulate their ideas increases. So the more they express themselves, the better they comprehend it. So you can keep having them write about it, but you're actually doing more for them, and I am eventually going to write some papers on this, and then we all will have some of that all pulled together. But we know it better when we know how to talk about it. You've all heard the teacher learns more than the student. That would be why. Because they're the one that has to communicate it to somebody else. So the more our kids can say, verbalize, articulate, orally communicate what they know, the better we know they know it. How much does this transition into their faith? How important is that to us? And that motivated me at this point in time a great deal. 1997, HSLDA announced the National Homeschool Debate Competition, and that was perfect for me because I had a private Christian school for homeschooling families, and I began coaching debaters. And I shared some of that story the other day, so we'll go quickly, but I knew that we needed to have our Christian young people equipped to communicate their ideas in the presence of opposition. I knew that much. I knew that debate had helped me with that, even though I've developed a few bad habits along the way that I had to get untrained from, and I'm still getting untrained from. Dr. Gary told us yesterday, right? The willingness to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Boy, is that such an important lesson for all of us. And so I began to learn some of those lessons in this time. 1998, the first speech and debate conference, and that is actually what it was. It is not now, but it was then. That's what we knew, and that's all we knew to do. And so we held a speech and debate conference for kids who had participated in the program in January of 1998. And we sent a lot of kids on to the national tournament, and they were very, very successful in that first infamous Ohio phone call that I've told you about over and over and over again. In short, when David's here today, so thanks for coming over, honey. David answered the phones at that time, and since then we've got so many other helpers, and I'm so grateful that somebody from Ohio called. Well, I mean, besides just us, that's what I meant. So, but we have, there are other people to do so much of this, and so, but he answered the phone, and a woman from Ohio called and said, "Can your wife come here and show us how to do what she does? We saw her debaters at the national tournament, and they're not only good, they're nice." That was a huge statement for her to make, because already in the second year of that event, what was becoming easy to accept for Christian parents was, it's okay in the realm of debate. Remember, I came out of the Christian college environment where that's what was trained. It's okay to be rude. It's for the debate round. It's okay. That's how you get your point across to your opponent. It's okay to treat them like that. But when my debaters came to me, I said, here's the deal. I'm not seeing where the Bible says it's okay to be rude to your brother or sister for the sake of this argument. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing that that's what Scripture tells us to do. As a matter of fact, I'm seeing something very different. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to invite the people who don't know anything about what you're talking about, and you're going to explain what you're trying to communicate to them. Cultural communication. I was getting that at that point in time. I didn't know we were really going to call it equipping Christians for cultural communication, but I was equipping Christians for cultural communication. I said, we're going to go out to other organizations and take platforms, and you're going to speak in the community. And some of the parents said to me, maybe some of you have heard this, I don't really see that as necessary. I brought my kids here to learn how to make a good debate argument. I understand that. I thoroughly understand that. Here's how I think we'll do it well now and in the future. And if you don't want to do it like that, that's okay with me. But this is how we're going to do it. And so if you want to be here, if you want to work with me, this is how we're going to do it. And so we did. We began building our program based on that. Of course, you know, in the rest of the phone call, David said, I'll go ask my wife. And he came to me and said, hey, they want us to come to Ohio. My kids weren't even old enough to debate. I had no curriculum. I had no way to teach this. I had gone nowhere except to work with the kids I already knew. I said, no, I absolutely cannot get to Ohio. I have absolutely no way to teach them. And he, of course, called her back and said she would be glad to come. That is the beginning of Communicators for Christ, right there. So here's what I know. He could see something that I could not. And that is how God led us at that time. God launched me into something that I couldn't see because somebody else thought that it was possible. And I do appreciate that to this day. And thank you for that, honey. Here's what I learned then. I didn't have the resources, and so I pursued the peer mentoring program. The peer mentoring program that we have been built on since the beginning came about because I didn't know what to do. That's how it started. Seriously. I don't know how to do this. I'm the educator with a master's degree. I have no idea how to go teach this to other people because it sounded awfully boring to have some lady from California arrive in Ohio and tell a bunch of teenagers how to debate. I didn't know how to do that. I knew how to tell them what's involved in debate, but I didn't know how to do that. Thus, the peer mentoring program was born, and we can see the benefits of that all over the organization today. For children, for adults, for all of us. If we're known for anything, we're known for peer mentoring. And so I'm so grateful that God committed me to something against my will without any resources. Today I'm grateful. At the time I had different conversations, but now I'm really pleased that I did that. So we developed our peer mentoring program. We did 5 conferences. We thought that was a really big deal. Did 5 conferences in 1 year. How about that? More recent interns. David's next great idea. Men have so many great ideas. And this one was to get a motorhome and put a bunch of teenagers in it. Of course you know about that. And I just thought it was the most ludicrous thing I'd ever heard in my entire life. I told David that, I told God that, I told a few other people that. And I just thought it was stupid. How are you going to pack teenagers in a motorhome and impact culture in any positive way whatsoever? Beginning with my own personal culture. I couldn't see how this was going to be a good thing. And it turned out